Don't we all love a good joke? Don't we all like humor? Don't we all like watching comedies and just looking at memes? And we all like to laugh. Well, maybe two of you don't, but most of the world likes to laugh. So today on this Theology Thursday, I want to talk about humor, particularly humor in the Bible. And I want to look at it in a few different categories. First of all, there have actually been a couple of books written about humor in the Bible. One that I read this last year was not very good. A lot of things that he thought were humorous, I don't think were really intended to be humorous. But there have been a few books written on humor in the Bible, but not that many. Most people who write books are serious kind of personalities. That's why they write, and they want to write on serious theological subjects. They don't want to write about laughing in the Bible. Now, one of the challenges that we face when we read the Bible is that we're reading the Bible. There's no one rolling their eyes. We don't hear their tone of voice. We don't hear their cadence. Humor is mostly about timing. There have been some good jokes ruined because the punchline was given too soon or too late. So it's about, a zinger's about on time. That's what makes humor work. It really is all about timing. And so we don't see that. We don't get dramatic pauses. We don't hear a sarcastic tone of voice. All we have is words on a page. So it makes it difficult. But by the way, it's not just with humor. We don't have any other tone of voice. We don't know was someone yelling, unless it tells us they were yelling. Were they yelling? Were they talking in a very soft voice? We get a few places again where people whisper, but most of the time the Bible doesn't give us any of that. It just, here's what they said, and we don't know exactly how they said it. And were they waving their arms and, all kinds of stuff. So we just don't know. We just have words on a page. So sometimes it makes it difficult because there's no kind of inflection or anything. Now, by my calculation, there are at least 4 types of humor in the Bible. I'm sure we can find more, but at least I would categorize there are 4 types of humor. The first type of humor is what's called polemics or polemical humor. Polemical humor is when something is said or written to take a shot at someone, to make fun of them. And so you're telling me there's a chance? No, there's not. It's written to basically say there's not a chance. Like it's polemical humor. We see this early in the Bible, very, very early. In Genesis chapter 1, we get the account of creation, but it's not just sort of a flat, vanilla way of writing. There actually is some humor in here that is polemical. It's making fun of others. And so in chapter 1 of Genesis, verse 16, and God made the 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, that'd be the sun, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. That's it. And the stars. This massively huge universe. And stars are an afterthought. They don't even matter. They're irrelevant. By the way, God made the stars. The reason this is humor is because he's making fun of all the other nations that worshiped the stars. The stars are so insignificant to you and me that they're just kind of tossed in as an afterthought. They're irrelevant. So this is a polemical way of doing it. Now, I'm not saying that this is historically accurate, but the way it's worded, the way it's written, is written to kind of take a cheap shot at the rest of them and to let Israel know we don't worship the stars. They're just kind of tossed in. Yeah, God made the sun for the day, he made the moon for the night, and the stars. So that's polemical humor. And there's quite a bit of this throughout the Old and even into the New Testament. Jesus would actually use polemical humor as well. Then sometimes there's absurdity, which is ridiculous to make a point. One of my favorite passages in all the Bible is found in Judges chapter 9. And Abimelech, whose name means my dad is king, so his dad named him my dad is king, decides that he's going to be a king. He's going to kill all the rivals. He's a son of one of Gideon's sons, and he decides that he's going to take over and be the king. So Jotham is one of his brothers. They're all half brothers. There's a lot of different moms. So Judges 9:7 says, told to Jotham, and they went, stood on the top of Mount Gerizim, and cried aloud and said to them, listen to me, you leaders of Shechem, that God may listen to you. The trees went out to anoint a king over them. And they said to the olive tree, reign over us. But the olive tree said, will I leave my abundance by which God and men are honored to go hold sway over the trees? So the tree said to the fig tree, you come and reign over us. The fig tree said to them, well, I'll leave my sweetness and my good fruit and go and hold sway over the trees. The tree said to the vine, will you come and reign over us? The vine said to them, well, I'll leave my wine that cheers God and men and go hold sway over the trees. Then all the trees said to the bramble, that's just the bush, the thorn bush, you come and reign over us. And the bramble said to the trees, if in good faith you are anointing me king over you, then come and take refuge in my shade. Look, trees don't take, a thorn bush doesn't make shade for the trees. But if not, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. I mean, this is ridiculous. It's being absurd. He's making fun of Abimelech wanting to be king by using this absurdity humor. So that's a second kind. There's polemic, there's absurdity, then there's mockery. Elijah against the prophets on Mount Carmel in 1 Kings 18. They're carrying on and there's no fire from heaven. And Elijah says, well, why don't you cry a little louder? Maybe he's asleep, or maybe he's going to the bathroom, or maybe he's away on vacation. Like he's mocking them. Matter of fact, Psalm 2, and I want to read this because, I mean, it's pretty interesting. Why do the nations rage? The people plot in vain. The kings of the earth set themselves. The rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us burst their bonds apart, cast away their cords from us. He who sits in the heavens laughs. The Lord holds them in derision. God is mocking them. God's mocking them. Not just Elijah mocking the prophets of Baal. God mocks them. He sits up in the heavens and mocks them because of their silliness and ridiculousness. So we have polemical, we have absurdity, we have mockery, and then the last kind we have are actions. In Ezekiel, Ezekiel does a number of things. In chapter 4, he's cooking using human dung. And they're like, what are you doing? That's what you're going to be reduced to. Cooking over poop. He just does some really absurd actions, crazy actions, insane actions to make his point. So we have comedy by action, which is a form of comedy that is used today. The Three Stooges certainly made this wildly popular. So that's some of the humor that we find, 4 categories. The next thing we'll talk about is what about in the life of Jesus? I mean, that's one of the questions. And yes, the New Testament does say that Jesus wept. It does say that Jesus became angry. It never says that Jesus laughed. But it also tells us that we only have a fraction of what Jesus did. There's so much more that he did. And even the angry outburst or the sadness and the weeping are only confined to 1 or 2 places. Most of the time, the emotions of Jesus are never discussed at all. At all. So outside of a few isolated incidents, we don't know much about Jesus' emotional life at all anyway. But there are some things in the life of Jesus that are humorous when you think about it. Let's just start at the beginning. God declares the birth of Jesus to shepherds. Now, what were shepherds? Well, we know that David was the youngest, and he was out watching the sheep. In other words, shepherding the sheep was roughly the equivalent of flipping burgers at McDonald's. This is what teenagers did. So, God, to whom are you going to announce the birth of your son? And God says, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go down to McDonald's and go into the kitchen and we're going to tell them. The birth of Jesus, the way it's announced is humorous. It's intended to be that way. In some ways, it's polemical humor. I'm not going to the high and mighty. We're going to go down here to the teenage boys. That's who we're going to tell. And so there's some polemic to that about God doesn't recognize status the way we recognize status. And then Jesus teaching. You got to jam a camel through the eye of a needle. And the eye of the needle is not a gate you had to make a camel squat down to go through. That's historically inaccurate and not true. And I did a Theology Thursday on that back somewhere in the past year or 2. But it's funny. I mean, you get the picture, that can't happen. It's absurdity. Again, just over the top. Jesus turns water into wine. Now, we always talk about Jesus turning water into wine, but what we don't realize is that Jesus said, Go fill it from the water pots. Well, what were the water pots? Well, the Jews had these hand-washing rituals they would go through. So these are the pots that they wash their hands in. So it's like me saying this, go get a glass from the dishwater and give it to the host. And they do it. I mean, you talk about funny acts, like, are you kidding me? Jesus, I can just see him saying, watch this. Hey, go get some of the dishwater and give it to the host and watch what happens. I mean, sometimes, that's why I said sometimes we miss some of the humor because we're just told what happened without any description of the humor that would have been there. But it's actually pretty funny the way the whole thing works out. And then we have Matthew 23, where Jesus speaks to religious leaders. And again, I think he's mocking them. There's no doubt that he's being very, very sarcastic. And what he says is, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! You tithe mint and dill and cumin, have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. These you ought to have done without neglecting the others. You blind guides, straining out a gnat and swallowing a camel. I mean, this is just rife with sarcastic humor. Man, you make sure that you strain out the gnats, you strain out your tea or your coffee, but you swallow a camel. Jesus seemed kind of like this idea of these camels. That you got a telephone pole in your eye and you're trying to pull the toothpick out of your neighbor's eye. All these are humorous statements. What does it mean to tithe the mint and the dill and cumin? Well, here's the idea that, again, it was agricultural, so they didn't use money tithe, they used their food stuff. So it'd be like getting ready to salt your fries, and you put the salt on the table and you scoot 10% of the salt away and then put the rest on your fries so you can give that 10% of the salt to God. You go, that's ridiculous. That's the point. It's humor. It's sarcasm. Like, you're so worried about that, but you've ignored justice and mercy and love and the things that are really important. So we have, and then sometimes I think we don't realize how humorous some things would be. I mean, they've been out fishing all night, they haven't caught anything. And Jesus is like, hey, throw them on the other side of the boat. What? Are you insane? You go, yeah, throw them on the other side of the boat. I mean, there's humor in this. It's funny. And when they do, they catch more fish than they can handle. But the whole thought on the other side, like what, that side of the boat is better? I mean, really? It'd be like saying, look, eat the other side of the hamburger. That's the part that tastes good. Like the hamburgers don't taste the same on both sides. So it's that kind of thing. So it's just full of humor. So the Bible has a lot of humor in it and different types of humor, particularly sarcasm, which is my heart language. But there are two verses that speak about humor. So the first one is Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 4. There's a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. There is a time to laugh. There's also a time to weep. So not only does the Bible tell us here that humor is okay, but it's also telling us that there's a time when it's not okay. So there are times to be serious, times to goof around. Part of wisdom is being able to discern between those. But laughing is something that there is a time for that in our lives. The second one is probably the most important, Proverbs 17:22. A joyful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. That laughter is like a medicine. It's like a good medicine for you and me. And so I just want to kind of give this brief overview about humor in the Bible. There's polemical humor and mockery. There's absurdity, way overstating things, and then there are actions. And we see all of these in the life of Jesus as well. So don't feel bad about laughing. Have a good time. There is a time to laugh. Also realize there's a time not to laugh. There is a time to weep. But remember that joy, that laughter, it's like a good medicine. So I hope that sometime today you'll have the opportunity to encounter some humor in the Bible or in your life, and it'll bring a smile to your face and joy to your heart. God bless you. Have a great day.